Welcome to Abolition Radio, the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails, inviting you to join the fight to end human trafficking.
Oh, give me eyes to see. Oh, give me strength to lead. You give me all I need. So give me courage to believe.
Each week, Abolition Radio sheds light on the darkness of modern slavery, celebrates the work of abolitionists who are fighting for freedom, and equips the church to engage in the work of justice with hope rooted in God's Word. Our goal is to see a radio audience become an army of gospel activists.
You're in the neighborhoods we live in. You're in the ones we're passing by. You're in the ones we call our neighbors. And the ones who still escape our eyes.
Now, here's the host of Abolition Radio, founder and executive director of Love Never Fails, Vanessa Scott.
Welcome to Abolition Radio, the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails. We are in for quite a treat today, and thank you for listening. Hopefully you had an opportunity to join us last week where we heard from Miss Carolyn Russell of A Safe Place. And we also were at the Alameda County Fair.
Yeah, having a good time.
Yeah, doing the Love Never Fails tour. But we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we go into who our guest is today, I wanted to just say hi to my partner in justice.
Hello.
Benita
Hello, everybody.
Hopkins. We are here with an awesome abolitionist and activist in this fight against human trafficking, and that is Chris Stambaugh of the Grace Network. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We were just talking about Chris is fighting back allergies here and there, as I am as well. So if we sound a little stuffed up, the two of us, that's why. So, Chris, we want to just get started with learning a little bit more about you personally. So how did you get started in this fight against human trafficking?
Yeah, good question. Man, I've been in the nonprofit space for roughly 10 years, and I've been working with at-risk youth primarily throughout that time. And my wife and I were doing a stint down in Mexico, actually. We were working at an orphanage with at-risk children, and we were down there for a bit. We were about 8 months into a 2-year stint, and my wife got pregnant. And due to complications in her pregnancy, we were actually forced to move back to our hometown of Sacramento, California. And it was during my time in Sacramento. We just touched down in Sacramento, and out of nowhere, I was about to be a father. I was jobless and living with my in-laws. And so I needed to make some moves and find a career and some work here in Sacramento. And so I learned about a local nonprofit that was working with homeless youth, and struck a chord in me, wanted to get involved in working with that population. And so got a position as an outreach worker and started working with street homeless kids on running the streets of Sacramento. And, man, it was during that time that we saw that pretty much youth homelessness and sex trafficking kind of go hand in hand at times. And so I went on to become a youth advocate there. I helped lead a program and launch a program called our Survivors of Exploitation program. And at one time I had over 100 kids on my caseload, and about 50% of them were females. And of those females, about 90% of them had been sexually exploited. And so we just launched a bunch of programs and resources trying to wrap around that population here in Sacramento.
Wow. Yeah. I was just reading, a little bit of your bio, and I see here that you also started with 12 members in the summer of 2011, which was the same year that we started. So it's amazing that you are now up to a network of about 350 members, including businesses, ministries, nonprofit groups. Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually, so when I was working at that other nonprofit, this was early 2009, about 2 years into working there is when I launched the Grace Network, which is the nonprofit that I currently lead now. And in the beginning, we launched the Grace Network to try and build resource agreements with professionals in the faith-based community willing to provide their services pro bono to all forms of human trafficking survivors. And so literally in the summer of 2011, we launched with about a dozen members in this little resource network. And we've actually grown even more since what you just mentioned. And so this August, we'll head into our 5th year of operations, and we've gone from about 12 people in this database to over 2,000 contacts in
Wow.
this database.
Wow.
And I'm not kidding, whether it's businesses or churches or nonprofits or law enforcement or anybody trying to do anything anti-trafficking related in Sacramento, we've centralized it into a resource database. We launched a resource line. We have a resource app. We have a resource website. And we've just done different types of trainings and creative events to mobilize the Sacramento community at large to combat the issue of human trafficking.
That's great.
And this is why every time I say, I need to find somewhere for someone to go, they say, call Chris from the Grace Network. I need some diapers for one of our ladies. Call Chris from the Grace Network. I need an attorney. Call Chris. So you got the one-stop shop going on up there. That is awesome. So do you just serve folks in Sacramento area, or is it, what's your territory, if you will?
Yeah, it's the Sacramento region at large, but with an emphasis or concentration on the inner city of Sacramento. However, as I'm sure you ladies know, and many in the anti-trafficking fight, a lot of this population is mobile, very mobile.
Yep.
And so, you have young folks going from Sacramento to the Bay, from the Bay to Sacramento, young folks going from Sacramento to Reno, and back to Sacramento, down to Stockton, down to Los Angeles. And again, I'm sure we got young people going across state lines and across country and back.
Arizona,
and so we've had to oftentimes leverage a network of resources outside of Sacramento in order to properly support and serve a young person that may be caught in sex trafficking down in the Bay or Los Angeles or wherever they might be. So we are open and willing to work with anybody that is referred our way.
In a forward segment, I would love to kind of drill down on the application that you have developed. I'm very interested in that. And as you probably have heard through some of our mutual partners, we'd like to do some more work with you as it relates to that, because we've actually implemented, or we've designed, I should say, an Apple app, and we've never launched it because we sort of felt like we needed to have the infrastructure that could maintain it and make sure that it was quality. We didn't want to have someone go there and have it be like really snazzy one time and then sort of lose its luster. So, I know that there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into maintaining yourself as like sort of a current resource in the variety of ways. And so how do you do that? How have you been able to accomplish that?
One of the biggest things, when we talk about sustainability, and again, I'm sure you ladies know, people are constantly, groups are constantly seeking funding sources. And yes, funding is absolutely necessary for sustainability, but so is passion. And I think when you have a group of volunteers or non-paid staff members that are committed to a certain project or purpose, regardless of the funds being there, I believe that different projects can be sustainable. And so with the mobile application that we've designed, I think we've been able to rally a solid, small but committed team of people to ensure that whether the funding is there or not, this project can
continue
sustainable. Yeah. Totally. And so we rely on non-paid staff members to see that project move forward.
I think we have a lot in common. Our entire organization has been volunteer only until March of this year when we opened our home. And I personally think, some people are like, what? That's the worst thing that could happen to a person running a volunteer-only organization. But personally, I think that just the kind of passion and the kind of love that you get to witness when you're dealing with people who will do the work for free. And don't get me wrong, they'd love to be paid to do it. But, when you know that they'll do the work for free, it's like there's nothing like it. So, So I'd like to drill down a little bit more on the kinds of resources that are available, and then of course a little bit more on your app, and it's specifically around the National Human Trafficking Hotline. I know that there's a lot of interest in going into an app as well on that end, and I'd love to talk some about whether there's a partnership or maybe a partnership that we could suggest. So, in any case, we'll be right back with another session of Abolition Radio. Thanks so much.
We'll be back with more Abolition Radio right after these messages.
Trash bills weighing you down? At Case Industries, we specialize in lowering waste costs and providing trash consolidation and compaction services for multifamily properties, condos, and commercial shopping centers. Let us help you reduce operating expenses and increase property NOI. Case Industries, saving the planet, saving you money. Contact us today for a property trash and recycling assessment online at caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. That's caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. Case Industries, the property manager's friend.
Hi, I'm Sandra Herrera, CEO of Case Industries. I've found that many employers are looking for ways to help the community but don't know how. I encourage you to consider supporting Abolition Radio as a corporate sponsor. Love Never Fails offers all the resources necessary to help young women and men overcome the trauma of exploitation and abuse. And that's why I'm proud to have Case Industries supporting Abolition Radio.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
And welcome back to Abolition Radio, the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails. So we are here today with Chris Stambaugh, who is running the Grace Network in this Sacramento region. And he was just sharing with us that he has a database of over 2,000 resources that have come to the table to say, I am willing to provide my services pro bono to fighting against this issue of human trafficking. That is just incredible. So Chris, how did you go about campaigning to sort of bring about, get more people involved? And I guess my question is, I'm sure you're wanting to grow the network even further. So what are your plans as we go?
Yeah, I think it kind of happened by accident, but in the beginning, we had literally, our story is so simple. We had a young person sitting in front of us. She's 16. She's a sex trafficking survivor, or she's 19, or she's 22. She has extremely practical needs. There aren't funded resources in the city of Sacramento to meet specifically what those needs are. However, we know that there's people in our city that want to fight this issue, that want to help those that are affected by it, but they just need the most practical opportunity to do so. And so we were sitting with our young people. We're working with them on the day-to-day. They have very specific needs. So we would hop on our email and send an email referral out to our resource network, always protecting the confidentiality of our youth and the young folks who are serving. And then we blast out this request to the masses. And each time we do, we see people mobilize to help meet the need. And one of the, I think, unique things in the beginning is everybody wants to feel that they're a part of something because they are. And especially an issue like human trafficking that requires a response from any and every individual. And so we would report out on when the needs would get met. We'd have very unique needs being met. I can recall a young lady being trafficked to Ohio, being trafficked from Ohio to Sacramento, California, and she had multiple kids at home, and she needed to get home, but she had no clothing, no phone, no food, no transportation, no anything. And in a matter of hours, by sending multiple requests out to our resource network, we were able to meet every single one of those needs and get her back to her children in Ohio and provide her with clothing and a gas card and a temporary cell phone and some McDonald's gift cards, And so I think when we would report out on specific needs being met like that, word would kind of spread across our community that we were meeting needs in a grassroots approach, that we didn't have tens of thousands of dollars to meet these needs. However, young people were still being helped and they're still being served. And so literally it's kind of like that. That is how the Grace Network has continued to grow throughout the years.
That's so Grace, right?
Yeah.
That is Grace to the utmost.
I was just thinking that I know this is kind of sad, but I've heard your name a million times, but it just hit me really deeply how awesome your name is, the Grace Network, the Network of Grace.
Yeah.
That is just beautiful. That people, I've made a lot of corny jokes on this show about how any gift. I'm not going to say it again, Bonita, about the pigeons, but
thank you.
Any gift, anything that you can do, if you are a carpet cleaner, if you are someone who's good at checking on whether a fire extinguisher is expired, all those skills are needed when you're supporting other people. And so don't let your gift go to waste, right?
That's right.
Amen.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears on you just for a second. Now, you have 2 or 3 children, Chris?
We have 3 children.
Are they all girls?
No, we have one boy, and he's 6 years old, and then we have a daughter, and she's 3, and she commonly reminds me that she's 3 and a half.
3 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, and and then we have a brand new baby daughter, and she just turned 4 months.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was just as a man on the show, I've been seeing a lot of commentary since the women have won the Women's World Cup just recently. And that's I don't know if you follow at all, but
a little bit.
There's a lot of commentary banter going on Facebook about, I play like a girl, I'm bad like a girl, and kind of putting a different spin on that. And I was just curious, as a dad of 2 children, 2 daughters rather, what are your thoughts on, the way that it sounds like you're doing a fabulous job in terms of just giving people something specific they can do to rally around this issue, right? And create a resource network. Is there an opportunity for you as a man in that community to advocate or lean in? Have you been seeing some of those lean in advertisements about the men coming and kind of supporting women and saying, look, it's okay to play like a girl. That's a good thing.
That's right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I think we have to champion women as much as possible these days. I think when you look at our country historically, we've seen all sorts of forms of oppression, potentially one of those being, women's rights and what they're capable of doing or not doing. And I want both my girls to understand that they could do whatever they want to do in this life, And I think it's important to empower women. I think it's important to empower girls, especially in the anti-trafficking movement, which is predominantly led by women. It's unique, to be a man in this sphere, along just with a couple other male colleagues. I'm commonly the only man in the room at different task force meetings or collaborative meetings or coalition meetings. It's kind of sad, to be honest, but I actually have a lot in common with ladies who are feminists. We both get angry at men for not acting like true men. We get angry that men is the primary population that perpetuates an issue like human trafficking. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity for fellas, for men, for boys, for dudes to step to the plate and elevate women in our community that are making phenomenal changes with all sorts of different social issues.
That is correct. And you should come down to the South Bay or to the Oakland Task Force. We have plenty of men in the room representing.
That's true. I was just thinking that it would be interesting because I don't know if you know this, Chris, but we actually have a men's services group. And it's sort of a 2-pronged goal in that one is to have some role models that men can, young men who are at risk for becoming traffickers or men that have been trafficked or men that are, it's really one and the same. If you're at risk to becoming a trafficker, you're also at risk for gang life and criminal activity in general. And what we try to do is have some, other men basically do some things in the community and they join up with them and, rebuild a fence or, and then we pay them as interns to do that work. And so that's one sort of aspect. The other aspect is our director of that department, Marty Martinez. He goes out and he speaks. So he was up in Sacramento speaking at the Northern California division presentation for the Church of God in Christ earlier this year. And there were about 300 churches there. And I was just thinking, maybe there's an opportunity for you and Marty to join up in the Sacramento region and talk to the churches there in places maybe where you're not already talking to folks, and just kind of expand upon the conversation in terms of, I mean, there's such rich resource that you have there. I want to make sure that all of the Church of God in Christ churches that we spoke to have an awareness of what you're doing. So mental note for myself, I will connect you with Marty. And he's really big on just getting more men together. It's really hard, unfortunately, to get the men, I guess, to feel some ownership in this without feeling like they're being scrutinized and their every move watched, and that they have to be held to this higher standard, if you will, than other people do. It kind of keeps them away, I feel like. So I anytime there's a man that's willing to step out, such as yourself, I just want to be as supportive as possible. Yay, Chris! So we're going to take a break. We'll come back in just a second, and I'd like to dive a little bit into your app, and then maybe some things that you may be doing with the National Human Trafficking Hotline. I know that there's some interest for them in launching an app. So anyway, we'll come right back and we'll discuss it further.
We'll be back with more Abolition Radio right after these messages from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Vanessa Scott with Abolition Radio, where every week we invite you to join the fight to bring an end to human trafficking. Abolition Radio is the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails, our nonprofit, which is dedicated to the rehabilitation, education, and protection of youth involved or at risk of becoming involved in domestic sex trafficking. Our goal with Abolition Radio is to eradicate human trafficking in all forms, sex trafficking and labor trafficking locally and globally. We are excited to bring this program to KFAX as we will share stories of hope and opportunities to mobilize the body of Christ and turn this audience into an army of gospel activists who will speak up for justice and act on behalf of those who are trapped or recovering from slavery. Find us on Facebook at Abolition Radio or on the web at abolitionradio.org, and join me each Saturday at 3 p.m. for an exciting episode of Abolition Radio right here on AM 1100 KFAX.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
And welcome back to Abolition Radio, the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails. So, Chris, we were just chatting during the break about National Human Trafficking Hotline's application. So they've implemented a web-based app, you were saying, that shares the bed capacity, housing capacity, if you will. And so they published a report in 2012 that said that there were 529 beds dedicated to human trafficking survivors, including children and adults. That's throughout the U.S. So I haven't seen the app. This is an online app that sort of updates that data. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was just in D.C., Washington, D.C., a couple of weeks ago. They had a symposium for child trafficking and welfare and their child welfare agencies. And I met with some of the Polaris folks, or I'd spoken with them a little bit, and I was showcasing our mobile application, and right after me, they were showcasing a web-based platform or a web-based application that was basically, it's a pilot, and so I don't think it's out to the masses yet, but essentially what they're piloting is a web-based app that it's a project that is identifying available beds in their communities of shelters for human trafficking victims. So identifying beds, and then this application notifies first responders when there's availability. So when a human trafficking victim is identified, they can be instantly connected to that available bed in their community. So I imagine, it sounded like they're having some pretty good success so far. So I imagine that they'd be rolling this out nationwide with all the beds, over 500 beds that they've identified in the past. But yeah, pretty neat project, and definitely got me inspired to keep on innovating here in Sacramento.
And so your app is, do you have an app for Android and also in the Apple Store?
Yeah, so we designed a project. We started working on it January of 2014. We launched in July last year of 2014 and have been slowly rolling it out. And this is an all-volunteer project. Mm-hmm. And it's gone from 1 county to 7 counties in probably about 8 or 9 months. And essentially, it's called Grace City. And Grace City is free and live on the Apple App Store and Android Google Play. And essentially what we've done in Sacramento is we've taken every resource in the entire Sacramento region and we've centralized it and we've adapted it to a smartphone application. And so if you have been in the nonprofit space, social work space, anti-trafficking space for any length of time, and you're listening to this broadcast, I am sure you have seen or been part of a project where you have compiled a digital or physical resource guide, and then you've distributed it to the masses. And one of the challenges with that is the moment you disseminate that information, you already have to make an edit because things are constantly changing all the time. And so instead of trying to take kind of like an old school approach to that type of project or model, we took it and again, we've adapted it to a smartphone application. So now you can make real-time edits. You can get instantly connected to shelters, to safe houses, to any type of agency that provides counseling or mental health services or even basic things like clothing or hygiene or food. And one of the unique things, last thing I'll say on it is that it doesn't just connect victims or young people to anti-trafficking organizations, but it also connects them to other nonprofit groups that may not be deemed officially anti-trafficking, yet they still provide a viable service to the community. And they have insurance and they've been vetted and they have confidentiality policies and everything else. And so it's not just anti-trafficking organizations, but it's any nonprofit that could provide any type of service to a young person that has been affected by trafficking or who's vulnerable to it, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah,
it does. And I mean, I'm looking at your app now, and the graphics are really slick. So you have somebody who's pretty smart there in the back room volunteering for you, it looks like. We call him Oz. Well, that's good.
I think one of the challenging things in the nonprofit space, and maybe you've seen this, but man, sometimes we're stuck like 10 years ago with our graphics and with our design and our marketing and our tactics to elevate our mission. And so with the Grace City app and other forms of, marketing or advertising or design, and what we're trying to do with the Grace Network is just be really intentional. You know, if traffickers or maybe other folks in the for-profit space, if they're going to use technology and if they're going to use mediums to either perpetuate their crimes or elevate their business or whatever, then why can't the nonprofits?
That's right. Exactly it.
We could do the same exact thing, except use these types of products and services for social good.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's fantastic. And this is absolutely our philosophy. Many of us are professionals working full-time jobs and then volunteering. And that's another added benefit is that you're connected with these networks of people that are doing this professionally. And so I'll just speak for myself. I don't have a lot of tolerance for slow moving, the traditional way of doing things. Let's just say.
She does not.
And that's just because that's my day to day, working at Cisco Systems. It's like I'm around all these alpha type people, and so I've got to pull the tiger in, and so, but what's beautiful about it is it doesn't have to be this competitive, crazy kind of environment. It's people who are super passionate and loving, like this outpouring of love with the combination of doing things with excellence and being, really skilled at doing those particular things. That makes, I think, it a great combination combination. So it sounds like you've got a real good group of folks that's maintaining this app. And it's so simple. That's the other thing I like about it. Just 6 squares. There's a search button, a victim ID, some assessment tools, be it mental health characteristics or living health or physical health sort of criteria that one might be able to use to assess whether they're dealing with somebody who's a trafficking survivor. So that is, that combined with, the pin drop. Who can't relate to the Google Map pin drop that shows the resources, which is kind of like what our app was supposed to be. But we were going to integrate voices. We actually called our app the Captive Voice. And what we were going to do is, because we do a lot of street outreach, we were going to record survivors saying things about their life, not necessarily dreary things that their aspirations that they might have, and then we were going to have little wave files on our map. Because we wanted to give them a voice, we wanted to give them an opportunity to be heard. That said, it sounded great in concept, but as we thought it through a little bit further, we never wanted to put someone at risk or make it unsafe. So we decided not to pursue the correlation between a location and a voice, right?
Sure.
I mean, recording their voice, maybe that's a good thing, and certainly we see that with documentaries and whatnot, that there's some power in hearing from people that are experiencing that are surviving, but I never want to put anybody in harm's way, so that's why we sort of abandoned it. But I just love what you've done here. This is wonderful. So how can we support you, and how can the listeners support you? Are there things that you need to keep this going and to grow the distribution of this app?
Yeah, a couple of things. If people wanted to learn more about our vision, our mission, our impact, they could hop on our website, thegracenetwork.org. If you click on resource, that will actually populate all the details for the Grace City app. There's different information on there about how to expand this or how to develop it for another county in the state of California. So I think we have our 7th, like I mentioned, county kind of in contract right now. It's very low cost to expand it to other counties. And basically, we're not trying to get rich off this thing. We're trying to help as many people as possible. And so the costs are extremely low. And there's a packet of information on our website. People can also, if we're already live in a specific county in one of those 7 counties and their agency wanted to join the Grace City app, they can also hop onto our website, thegracenetwork.org, click on that link resource, and there's an agency registration button. So essentially, you fill out your profile. That information gets sent to our servers. We have multiple vetting questions on there to ensure that they're a viable resource. We work in tandem with a lead agency that we're contracting with in the county to, again, ensure that it's a viable resource. And then when the information is vetted, we click enter, and it goes live in the application, similar to like a Yelp. And we're just trying to centralize and gather as much resource information as possible and then make it as easily as accessible as possible. One of the unique things as well for a county that be looking to develop it in their community is that we can actually export all of the data on the back end. So you can still do your physical resource guide, your digital resource guide, but now you also have your mobile application resource guide. So you gather the info and then we can export it into an Excel spreadsheet. That way people can also use the other mediums to disseminate the information as well.
Wow, that is awesome. Okay, we're going to have to take a quick break, but this is really awesome. We'll come right back and continue the discussion. Thanks so much.
We'll be back with more Abolition Radio right after these messages.
This is Pastor Gary from Faith Fellowship in San Leandro. We are so excited about the launch of Abolition Radio every Saturday. And we have seen Love Never Fails under Vanessa Scott grow right here in San Leandro out of our church at Faith Fellowship. And now her ministry God gave her a passion to get young people out of the sex trafficking and sex slave industry. And she has been doing a phenomenal job. Not only is it locally, but now it's going globally. In fact, I prophesied to her that God was going to use her to go nationwide, and that's exactly what's been happening. She is a woman with a vision, with a direction, and a passion to see these young people come out of this kind of arena. And to God be the glory. Join with her every Saturday on Abolition Radio to hear what she has to say and then become a part of what she's doing. AbolitionRadio.org. Love never fails.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails. I wanted to just, so we have these great resources, the app and then all of the 2,000 pro bono, the service providers that are providing the pro bono services. And I guess where I'm going with this is clearly, your heart is in the right place. If you're anything like us, heart is in the right place, but it's also really hard to get funding that we need to to keep going. And I'm just curious. So, one of the things that we've had to do a really good job at is collecting data around how many people we're providing our education program to. We've done prevention with over 4,000 students in California thus far. And a variety, we've trained 59 mentors, and we have this sort of spiel that we share with people because they want to know what kind of impact you're having. And so I'm curious about the Grace Network. How many, downloads do you guys keep track of that? A number of people that are downloading your app and Yeah.
So with the Grace City app, we've resourced over 1,100 first responders throughout 7 counties, primarily focused in Central and Northern California. And we're seeing the usage. We've had about close to 6,000 sessions, which breaks down to, I'm terrible at math, but the last time I ran the analytics, we have about 500 sessions per month, which is pretty incredible. For somebody to click on the app, to be exploring through the different agency profiles, to be clicking on the hotlines to access the resources. So we've had over 25,000 screen views, and if people aren't familiar with kind of the analytics language, that just basically means, yes, people are accessing the app and people are using it on a frequent basis. So we have about 120 agency profiles or 120 resources in Central and Northern California, all contained within the Grace City app. And I think that's, I'm trying to think if there's anything else related to the app. No, that's it for the analytics.
Okay. And so I'm just looking, again, if you're anything like us here or what we've been seeing, one of the the common denominators that's really difficult for us in solving, and providing the resources is housing. And so I'm looking here under housing, and I see that we have Mary Graham Children's Center and Molly's House and Visalia Rescue Mission. Those are the 3 that pop up. Well, it's probably because I put in San Joaquin County as my filter. But in any case, are you seeing a challenge with housing, and is housing actually growing in the Central Valley area or in the Sacramento region?
I think housing we talk about it a lot, but it's so challenging. And if anybody is, for maybe folks on the outside looking in regarding the human trafficking issue, often people believe we need to open up more homes, more shelters, more safe houses. Yes, we do. However, I think one caveat to that is because human trafficking is a multifaceted issue, it requires a multifaceted response because not every person looks the same when it comes to what type of trafficking they've been affected by. And when people ask me in Sacramento, what do we do with a human trafficking victim? And my question to them is, well, what form of human trafficking is it? And then it's like, okay, are they male or are they female? Mm-hmm. Are they a minor or are they an adult? Is it labor trafficking or is it sex trafficking? If it's a juvenile, are they on probation? If not, are they in foster care? If not, do they have a safe family to go home to? If not, then we need to call child protective. I mean, there's just so much that goes into assessing the proper housing and safe house resource that anybody needs that's been affected by trafficking or vulnerable to it. And so for me personally, I believe in the Sacramento region that we have adequate shelter, housing, and safe house options. We have 17 different places that a person, minor, adult, male or female, you name it, could go, in our region. And I think what's equally important is assessing somebody's needs properly, because if it can't be matched to a resource here in Sacramento, maybe they need to relocate, and maybe it's better for them to get connected to a safe house or a shelter in San Francisco or Los Angeles or maybe out of state. So the more and more we're networked together, the more and more I believe we have sufficient housing or shelter resources. It just needs really good coordination. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely does. It's really a challenging discussion for me because I know that there's a lot of housing that's available. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, but there is housing available. But I hear quite a bit of sort of mixing in shelters with trauma-informed human trafficking housing and sort of counting that as appropriate beds. And I've never been able to take a survivor to a shelter and have them stay for more. Actually, I've never taken a survivor to a shelter. The minute I say shelter, it's a no-go. And then, I've taken a couple of survivors to a sober living home, and really the only way that it made the only reason why they stayed is because the person who was the house manager in that home ran the home like a recovery program almost and was very hands-on. But if it was the typical just, stay clean and sober and keep your nose clean and, type of situation, I don't know that they would have stayed. Most of them didn't stay for very long. And so I think, the more I learn about this, it's just the population really needs a certain kind of care. And, and we've now kind of coined that, and not, Love Never Fails hasn't, but the industry has coined it as trauma-informed care. And, and we see it, really being working effectively in our home, in our IM house. And, one of the things that we've been thinking about doing is some sort of expo, if you will, where we're talking about housing and really sharing best practices with one another, and understanding, how some people are overcoming certain challenges. The other piece that's so important is that, we have this perception of what success is, especially in this fight against. I was just speaking with a group of survivors that are talking about getting involved in a documentary. And one of my worries is that people will see them on film and think that they've arrived. They'll be like, oh, there they are. They're perfect. Everything's fixed. And it's like, I worry about that because they'll undergo undue judgment. And, and it's like, like you said, different people need different things.
Right.
So that's why I think it's just awesome that you have these 2,000 resources, because there's a good spread of opportunities to get some of your needs met depending on where you are.
Right.
Yeah. So that's great.
That's good.
Yeah. So are there any events, Chris, that you'd like to, those that are listening to know about? And again, I think you mentioned your website, but maybe mention it again. And if you have a Facebook page, share with the audience. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we're on all sorts of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find us at The Grace Network. Our website, thegracenetwork.org, has a ton of information about our vision, our mission, our impact, our focus here in Sacramento and beyond. You can get information for the Grace City app. If you have an iPhone or an Android phone, please feel free to download the app. Again, it's a free download. On Saturday, August 29th at the Grace City Center. It's in Old North Sacramento, up here in our region. We're doing an open house. We also have a centralized resource center right in the inner city of Sacramento. So Saturday, August 29th at 10 a.m., doing an open house brunch. So free food, free drink, free mimosas.
Food? Where is that?
Yeah. So just welcoming, our business leaders in, our community leaders in, just to check out the new facility and everything that we're doing in the inner city. And one of the things, I'll just finish with this, but one of the things we're passionate about is not just helping the already trafficked person. We want to do that, but we also want to be on the prevention side of things. And so we believe inner cities, in urban communities or impoverished communities, especially the neighborhood or community where our center is located, man, these are like breeding grounds and hotbeds at times for issues like sex trafficking. And we know that it's urban youth primarily that get caught in this issue. Not saying it doesn't happen, in the suburbs, but I'm just saying the majority we have, urban men and women, vulnerable to both sides of this issue, to become traffickers or the trafficked. And so just having a resource center right in the heart of a community like that to help all populations of young people, we just think is so key in combating this issue effectively.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. I'm just urging those that are listening, please do support the Grace Network, support Chris and his work. And congratulations on your new baby girl and your family there. I hope you feel better real soon. And we'll be right back.
More Abolition Radio right after these messages from our sponsors.
Trash bills weighing you down? At Case Industries, we specialize in lowering waste costs and providing trash consolidation and compaction services for multifamily properties, condos, and commercial shopping centers. Let us help you reduce operating expenses and increase property NOI. Case Industries, saving the planet, saving you money. Contact us today for a property trash and recycling assessment online at caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. That's caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. Case Industries, the property manager's friend.
Hi, I'm Sandra Herrera, CEO of Case Industries. I've found that many employers are looking for ways to help the community but don't know how. I encourage you to consider supporting Abolition Radio as a corporate sponsor. Love Never Fails offers all the resources necessary to help young women and men overcome the trauma of exploitation and abuse. And that's why I'm proud to have Case Industries supporting Abolition Radio.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
And welcome back to Abolition Radio, the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails. Thanks again, Chris Stambaugh from the Grace Network. And we're just going to take you through some of the events that we have going on in the community. Benita, want to take us through?
Yeah, well, we have coming up really soon on the 15th, we have with our friends at Beth Am Temple in Palo Alto, we have Celebrate in the Garden with women from 6 to 8. And once again, that's at Beth Am Temple in Palo Alto. Also on the 18th, we will have our regular monthly street outreach, and we will be walking the East Bay. And so come if this is your first time coming to be with us, come for training at 6:30 at 577 Manor Boulevard at Faith Fellowship Church and get you all trained. And we leave just before 9 and we're out to midnight. On August 2nd, the first Sunday of the month at Lift Ministries at 22580 Grand Avenue, Hayward, we will be having our monthly Action Network meeting. So anyone who is interested in finding out all about the ins and outs of Love Never Fails and wanting to get involved, please come out. And we will be also having our second graduation of our Thrivers. Yay. From our I Am home at that particular network meeting. So please come join us from 2:15 to 4:15 at Lift Ministries Hayward. Also on the 8th, we will be having a benefit concert at Templo de la Cruz from 4 to 7, and that is 24362 Thomas Avenue in Hayward as well. Please come and join out join us. So it's a benefit concert benefiting the I Am House.
Yes.
And Love Never Fails. And also on August 15th, the Back to School Health Fair will be taking place from 10 to 2 at Solid Rock Church of God in Christ in Newark, California. And there will be lots more events coming in the coming months, but I think you have a mouthful right there.
Yes.
So thank you, and come on out and support us.
Yes. And so we always want to invite you to check out our Facebook pages. We have many. We've got our Abolition Radio page. We've got our Love Never Fails page. If you are a young person, ages for youth, YCAT
12 to 29.
12 to 29, like our Youth Commission Against Trafficking page and learn about how you can get involved with YCAT.
Yes.
If you are interested in helping us find missing and exploited children, go ahead and like our page, Project Look For Me. And we just implemented a new page called the LNF Tour, which, as those of you who joined us at the Alameda County Fair last Friday, we had our annual event there. And so we hope to actually expand the number of times that we do that event in different counties and different fairs. And so you can go ahead and like the LNF Tour page as well. And then, of course, going to our page, our website, which is loveneverfailsus.com, or our Twitter feed, which is loveneverfails5. So lots of ways to get involved with us. And of course, we also want to invite you to sponsor this program. We would not be able to continue on the air without the generosity of a couple of sponsors. And we definitely need your support to continue this work. And so on our website, there is an area that talks about 40 for Freedom. We encourage you to become a 40 for Freedom partner. It's $40 a month. I personally can think of what would that be, like 4 grande vanilla soy lattes. If you give up 4 grande vanilla soy lattes, you can help 6 children to become educated, prevention in the schools, or you could provide counseling for 4 survivors, during a month. And if certainly a combination of a lot of you could help us with our housing program, because that's pretty expensive, but we need your help.
Yes.
So please support us, help us to keep this program on the air. And also becoming a corporate sponsor or a show sponsor will give you an advertising opportunity during the break. So, we are very excited about the number of people that are starting to listen to the show and provide commentary on the Abolition Radio Facebook page. And so this would be a great opportunity for you or your company to gain some additional exposure in the community and really be a voice that says you are not okay with human trafficking and you are pro-youth and pro-education and pro-love. So please do join us in this fight in whatever way you can. And of course, support Mr. Chris Stambaugh from the Grace Network one more time.
Yes.
Check him out. So, of course, we want to end our show, in case you haven't heard the show before. You just need to hear it again like we always do. We want to make sure that you know that you are loved.
Thanks for joining us this week on Abolition Radio. We trust that you've been inspired by these stories of hope and survival, and that you'll accept our challenge to get involved by contacting us at abolitionradio.org, by liking and sharing our page on Facebook, Facebook/Abolition Radio, or by making a contribution directly to Love Never Fails. Abolition Radio is the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails, which is a donor-supported, nonprofit ministry that Vanessa founded as a way of directly impacting the lives of young people who are trapped in or at risk of becoming involved in sex trafficking. This broadcast needs your involvement and support. To find out more, simply go to abolitionradio.org and click on Love Never Fails. Today's program was brought to you in part by Case Industries and with major support from the staff and membership and donors at Faith Fellowship Church. Our theme song, Courage to Believe, is by Justin McRoberts. Hear more about his passion for justice and art at justinmcroberts.com. Our audio engineer is Jarrell Martin, and this is Dave Naderhood. On behalf of Vanessa, Benita, and the whole team at Love Never Fails, Thanks for listening, and thanks even more for taking action to help set captives free.
You were in the neighborhoods we live in. You were in the ones we're passing by. You were in the ones we call our neighbors, and the ones who still escape our eyes.